Just wanted to make note, there's a sign-up sheet in the back for our Get Connected time together and luncheon. And so feel free to sign up. I'm a big believer in anything with meat and cheese. So just putting that out there. And maybe one person can bring some vegetables, but let's try to keep that at a minimum. It's been a busy week. It's been a full week. I don't know about you, but I feel like I had to work some extra shifts, but I got 5 days off coming up. This is day 1. So thank you. Yes. You know, working 4 on, 4 off is like, it's like the favor of God. I'm not going to lie to you. Like, I have 2 days off. Like, you know how, like, normal people, you work, like, 2 days, and it's like, oh, that's your weekend. And if you're really, really fortunate, you know, you get those long weekends, like, oh, 3 days, what am I going to do? It's just like, Every weekend is 4 days for me. Like, I just love it. It's like, after the first 2, I'm like, I still have 2 more to go. Brian, it's awesome. I know you don't want to hear about it. I know, of you of all people. But it's just like, this is how God intended life to be. Before the devil came in and made us have to do 5 days, God was like, no, 4 days is enough. And I totally agree with that. And it's wonderful. But I get 5 days, so yes. Unfortunately, we're in the process of packing up our house, so it's not as exciting as it sounds. We'll be packing and cleaning. You can keep all of our, we have about 4 or 5 of our regulars are actually at work. Now, that's the thing about shift work. A lot of them are at work today, so including Dennis, so you can just keep them in your prayers as everyone's busy about their mornings this morning. I'm a big believer in that God has a sense of humor. Every morning I look in the mirror and I see that. See, I'm not a detailed person. In all honesty, I find details annoying. They're like those little things that buzz around demanding your attention. And I'll admit, I'm more of a bit of a dreamer. So the idea of the possibilities, the dream is so much more exciting and alluring than a bunch of little things that tend to be tedious and time-consuming. But as I get older, and I hate that I just said that, but as I get older, I'm seeing the value in things I once ignored or want to sweep away. Back to God having a sense of humor. So I get this new job, a prison guard. I carry a uniform, I wear a uniform, I carry handcuffs, I've gotten force op training. It's kind of like this manly kind of thing, And there's lots of jobs in the prison. But of all the jobs in the prison, you can be in segregation, and you can be like escorting, or you have to take people out into the community with handcuffs, like these kind of like high profile, like manly kind of jobs. Where does God place me? Records. I don't know if it's the glasses, but somehow, again, God has a sense of humor. I end up in a position where I do lots of paperwork. I spend a lot of time in front of a computer, and the really dangerous part of my job is when I do filing and trying to avoid all the paper cuts. My whole job revolves around, you guessed it, details. It's excruciating. Like so often I feel like a square peg in a round hole. It's been a real test for me. I've honestly had to push myself in a new way. So I've been thinking about this, and when I took the job, I felt like God had something for me at the prison. And he does. It's called details. See, what I'm learning is details bring strength to the vision. Details cause things to be held together. Details really, really matter. See, in the legal system, missed details can totally change the outcome. Missed details can get people hurt. Missed details, as I've been told, can cause one to lose their job. And the truth of the matter is, God is a God of details. We see this in creation. From creation, we learn that God has all these details. Every function of our solar system made up of billions and billions of details that operate together to cause the world to function. And even right now, I cannot believe I'm preaching a sermon on details of all things. But what I'm discovering is between the dreams hoped for and those dreams coming to pass, is there a lot of details that really matter, that are actually keys or building blocks to seeing your dreams materialize. So this morning I want to look at Joseph, because we find a lot of truth in his life about the importance of details, that not only that, but the power of the details to seeing his dreams fulfilled. If you know the story of Joseph, and I'm not going to get into it, it's a big story, and I love the story of Joseph. I mean, Joseph he's such an amazing character, and I would just encourage you to read his story because there's so much in there for our lives today. But one of the things we see in the story of Joseph is about the details and how God used the details to move him forward in the dreams that he had for him. But the first thing that we do see from Joseph is that God gave Joseph a dream. In Genesis 37, it says, Joseph had a dream. And when he told it to his brothers, they hated him all the more. He said to them, listen to this dream I had. We were binding up sheaves of grain out in the field when suddenly my sheaf rose and stood upright, while your sheaves gathered around mine and bowed down to it. His brothers said to him, do you intend to reign over us? Will you actually rule us? And they hated him all the more because of his dream and what he had said. Then he had another dream, and he said to his brothers, listen, he said, I had another dream, and this time the sun, moon, and 11 stars were bowing down to me. First thing I want you to see this morning, and I want to emphasize, is that dreams are important. See, dreams provide us hope for the future. Dreams give us something to move towards. And without dreams, we do not need faith. Hebrews 11 tells us, now, faith is confidence in what we hope for and the assurance of what we do not see. It simply takes faith to dream. And that's why it's so important, because Hebrews 11:6 tells us, without faith, it's impossible to please God. So there's a correlation there with having a dream and faith and pleasing God. See, God wants you to dream. God wants you to hope. That's the essence of having God in our life, is that we have hope. That's what makes you different from everyone around you, from the world around us, is that when the world looks and they can't see any kind of hope, they can't see any kind of way out, they see the darkness of the day, we can step in with what's in us, and we have hope. We have hope that things are going to work out. We have hope that it's in control. We have hope that the situation isn't with void and that there is no possibilities. We have hope. And dreams in your life require a level of faith, a place of expectation of what God can do. So dreams are important. It's important that you have a dream. It's important that you are hoping for something. It's important that there's some kind of expectation in your heart. And simply put, it takes faith to be a dreamer. To believe for something bigger than yourself, something beyond just your natural ability. And Joseph gets this incredible dream where twice he sees himself exalted above his family. And it's like, wow. And this really gets to Joseph. He sees all the high points of his dreams. That he would become great. He would have power and prominence and prestige. And as a young man, Joseph even becomes arrogant, telling his brothers he's one day going to rule over them. Like that. If my younger brother, you're like, that doesn't work very well. But see, when God gives you a dream, his dream is always bigger than you. It's always bigger than the individual. His dream always ties into the bigger picture. His dream always includes justice and mercy and compassion and love. See, and this is the thing to remember, your dream is always for other people. God gives you a dream, but it's for other people. But Joseph thought his dream was about his family serving him. Little did he realize God had given him this dream so that he would one day serve his family. So that he would one day save his family. It was so much bigger. Isn't that human nature, though? You know, we think it's all about us. We make it all about us. And Joseph, he was no different. It was like, oh, I'm going to be this person of power. My whole family's going to come down and bow down to me. And when you look at the story of Joseph, and we can jump ahead and we see how God has ordained it, where Joseph is one piece of the puzzle of God's redeeming all of history, of all of humanity. And that is how our dreams are. Sometimes we think our dreams are all about us, but it's so much bigger than us. Your part to play is so much bigger than you. And so it's important that we see that as we walk through the dream that God places in our heart. We begin to realize that, hey, you know, as much as it's important to me and I value it, that there's a bigger piece of, it's a small piece of a bigger puzzle. But it's an important piece. And we learn that from Joseph. See, Joseph as a young man, he saw all the highlights of his dream. But what he didn't understand was there were details that the dream was to be built on. Details that would bring shape to his dreams, detail that would bring strength to his dream, and details that would ultimately change him, creating the structure within him that he would need to be able to carry the dream to reality. See, your dream will give you direction, but it's the details along the way that will determine your destiny. When I was younger, can I get someone to give me a glass of water, please? Thank you. When I was younger, I had a friend, and he was a really driven individual. And his dream was to be a millionaire by the time he was 30. And so he always talked about he wanted to make all this money so that he could support the church and support missions. And that was his dream, and he was real sincere about it. So he set off to do just that. He worked hard. He was persistent. Like he gave his all. And the hand of God was on his life, and he started to make a lot of money. But along the way, it started to become all about the money. It started to become about how he was making this happen and all the hard work he was putting in. And it became about all that was his. It became about having power and control. And he would do whatever it took to make a deal work. That was his attitude. That was his mindset. Oh, he would still give to the church, but his attitude was, I'll give it, but I'm going to tell you how to spend it. And if you don't do what I want, I won't give it. That's not a good attitude. See, he achieved a version of the dream, but by the end, it had very little to do with God. The reality was he didn't care about the details. He just wanted the dream. And so he lost the destiny of what God had for him. Because ultimately, the details are there to shape and prepare you for the dream. And we see this in the life of Joseph. How he embraced the common details that not only moved him towards his dream. Thank you. Just let that settle. Thank you. What a jerk, eh? What a jerk. You know, you go and serve me and everything, I just give you a hard time. So there were some of these common details of Joseph's life that shaped him to be able to move in the dream. And the first detail that we see from Joseph's embrace is integrity. As the story of Joseph goes, he's sold into slavery by his brothers and ends up in Egypt, a slave in the house of Potiphar. And I want to start by just reading Genesis 39 in verse 6. Now Joseph was well built and handsome. My real name's Joseph. Let's just stop and think about that. It's a good place just to meditate. Lord. Thank you for putting up with me this morning. I didn't have much sleep, and yes, exactly. After a while, his master's wife took notice of Joseph and said to him, "Come to bed with me." But he refused. "With me in charge," he told her, "my master does not concern himself with anything in the house. Everything he owns, he has entrusted to my care. No one is greater in this house than I am. My master has withheld nothing from me except you, because you are his wife. How then could I do such a wicked thing and sin against God?" And though she spoke to Joseph day after day, he refused to go to bed with her or even be with her. One day he went to the house to attend to his duties, and none of the household servants was inside. She caught him by his cloak and said, "Come to bed with me." But he left his cloak in her hand and ran out of the house. When she saw that he had left his cloak in her hand and had run out of the house, she called to her household servants. "Look," she said to them, "this Hebrew has been brought to us to make sport of us. He came in here to sleep with me, but I screamed. When he heard my scream for help, he left his cloak beside me and ran out of the house." She kept his cloak beside her until the master came home. Then she told him the story. "That Hebrew slave you brought us came to me to make sport of me, but as soon as I screamed for help, he left his cloak beside me and ran out of the house." When his master heard the story, he said to his wife told him, saying, "This is how your slave treated me." He burned with anger. Joseph's master took him and put him in prison, the place where the king's prisoners were confined. This had to be a hard pill for Joseph to swallow. He'd done the right thing. Before man, before God, he walks in integrity. And then this is how it turns out. Like it ain't no Disney story. Integrity will cost you. Joseph is now known and thought of as a rapist because of his integrity. Like it would have been easier just to go along with it. But understand, God is in the details. See, so often the will of God is found in the details, and the rejection of man was used by God to redirect Joseph to his dreams, towards his destiny. See, Joseph was never going to become a ruler of Egypt in Potiphar's house. As good as it was there, as much favor as he had there, it wasn't his destiny. And without the detail of integrity in Joseph's life, he would have never have achieved his dream. And in all our lives, no matter our dream, the details of integrity will pop out. There will be moments when you'll have to decide to do the right thing. When you'll have to recognize what looks like a small thing really carries a big conclusion. That as easy as it seems to just let it go, don't make a big deal out of it, it's not worth the hassle. See, that is where integrity steps in. And in the long run, the cost of letting things slide will be greater than the momentary pain of having integrity. Like, I'm amazed at, I think what I like about this story, and what I like about this is that this is real life. Like, we like to think that we do the right thing and we get the pat on the back and everything turns out fine. But the reality is, oftentimes in real life, you're going to run into situations where you're going to do the right thing and you're going to have all kinds of consequences come back on you. But what we also see in this story is that he does that, and then God uses this to get him to where he needs to be. Because God is in the details. So he uses this detail of integrity to actually move Joseph further along into his destiny. And so while it looks like a step back, it's actually a step up. Well, it looks like he's fallen back. God is actually setting him up to lead him into his destiny. And so often at times in our life, we're trying to make it all work. We're trying to kind of skate around the edges and just trying to somehow keep everything on a level field. But God's saying, no, you have to step up into some situations, and you're going to have act in integrity, and it's going to cost you. There's going to be a pain associated with it. But even in that, God is going to use it to get you to where you need to be. Like, I love this part of this story because it really speaks to often we get so caught up in our situation and we think somehow that it kind of, we can't see beyond it. And it's Joseph's story really helps us to see there's more going on than what we just recognize in our moment of where we're in that place of struggle, in that moment where we have to stand up and make a decision. Integrity is an important detail that we have to walk through. The second detail Joseph embraces is hard work. Genesis 40, verse 2, Pharaoh was angry with his two officials, the chief cupbearer and the chief baker, and he put them in custody. This is further along the story now. He's in prison. And he put them in custody in the house of the captain of the guards in the same prison where Joseph was confined. The captain of the guard assigned them to Joseph, and he attended them. When we read the story of Joseph's life, we see in every situation Joseph found himself in, he prospered. From being a slave to the prison to the kingdom. And there is a detail of hard work that we see in Joseph. Like, it wasn't just some magic fortune of luck that Joseph always prospered. Joseph prospered in hard environments because he worked hard. We see in this part of the story that Joseph attended these men. Like, he didn't have to do that. He was a prisoner. He could refuse to do anything. Trust me, prisoners do that. He could have moped around all day. After all, he shouldn't have been there. He truly was an innocent man. But as a slave and as a prisoner, Joseph still found opportunity where he was at, and he worked hard. See, the Bible tells us in Proverbs 13:4, a sluggard's appetite is never filled, but the desire of the diligent are fully satisfied. Proverbs 15:19 says, the way of the sluggard is blocked with thorns, but the path of the upright is a highway. Proverbs 20 verse 4 says, a sluggard do not plow in a season, so at harvest time they look but find nothing. Like, yes, God promotes people. God will open doors for your life, but you still have to get up and walk through the door. You know, I think sometimes we read these stories and we gloss over all these certain things. And we think, oh, it's just God just gave him this favor. And so everything just fell into place for Joseph's life. No, there was a lot of times, day after day, because we know Joseph spent decades in prison and being a slave, where Joseph had to get up and do the right thing and work hard and find an opportunity in the place where he was at. See, there are opportunities in the place that you're at. In the hard places where you're at, in the hard place where you find yourself in your life, there are opportunities, but you're going to have to work hard to find them. And as you do that, though, as you're willing to put yourself out there and not just mope and not just whine and cry about the hardness of the situation, but look for the opportunity in the situation, you're going to find that God's going to move you forward. You're going to find that God's going to prosper you. You're going to find that God's going to help you to go beyond that situation. But there was a detail of hard work that Joseph grabbed onto and put into place in his life. Hard work is a detail that will keep you from your dream if you don't embrace it. See, if Joseph had just sat around, if Joseph hadn't found the opportunity to learn and grow, even in prison, he would have stayed stuck in prison. I've said this before, but it bears repeating. There's something God has for you where you are now for your tomorrow. There's something for you in your today for your tomorrow. Because ultimately, God was preparing Joseph to run a country. God had Joseph in school. He started with teaching Joseph how to run a household, then a major institution. Like you read the story of Joseph, he became the head of the household, and then he becomes the head of a prison. There's a progression that we see in his life where he learned how to be diligent and work hard and run this household. Now he's ready to move forward, and he comes into prison, and he works hard and becomes diligent, and he learns how to run a big place like a prison. And what's the next thing for him is so that now he's ready to go and run the country. He wasn't ready when he was a shepherd boy. He wasn't ready to go from the shepherd field to running the country. There was a process, and there was all these details in this process that God was taking him through so that he could go to running the country. And where you're at in your life, what God is often doing with you in your life, you think, man, I'm just hidden away here, and I'm just plowing away on this little piece of ground, or I'm just working this little job that doesn't really seem to be really significant. But there's details in this job that God wants to get into you, that he wants you to embrace, that he's asking you to grab a hold of, that he wants to teach you, because he's taking you on to another place. But you got to start here, and you got to recognize what's here, because what's here is for your tomorrow. You're thinking, well, it's just for today, but God's saying, no, it's for tomorrow, and then the day after that, and the day after that. It's a progression that God's trying to take you through. But it takes hard work. It takes every day getting up and say, okay, I'm going to give my best. I'm going to choose. And this is the thing. I mean, as hard it is for us some days, you get up, you're tired, the kids were up crying all night, and you have bags in your eyes, and your hair's a mess, and you're like, oh, okay, I got to go to work, and I got to try to make it through the day. And Joseph was in prison. It would have been so easy just to give up. It would have been so easy to not try to put the effort in. It would have been so easy just to settle and just say, well, whatever, it doesn't even matter. None of it matters. But it did, and he understood that. It was a detail that he got a hold of. And it's hard to trust God when your dreams seem so far from your reality. Like he's in prison dreaming of the palace. But I know he was still dreaming because he continued to work hard. And hard work is a detail of your life that counts. The third detail in this story is compassion. Genesis 40, verse 5. Each of the two men, the cupbearer and the baker of the king of Egypt, were being held in prison. And they had a dream the same night. Each dream had a meaning of its own. When Joseph came to them the next morning, he saw that they were dejected. So he asked Pharaoh's officials who were in custody with him in the master's house, "Why do you look so sad today?" "We both had dreams," they answered, "but no one can interpret them." Then Joseph said to them, "Do not interpretations belong to God? Tell me your dreams." And the story goes on, and Joseph interprets both their dreams. But what I want to draw your attention to is he noticed their sadness. Like, get that. He noticed. Like, it's prison. There's a lot of sad people in prison. Like, it's not a real happy place. But he noticed and he cared. See, often the fulfillment to your dream is tied up in the people around you. Like, you might be surprised by the relationships in your life that matter more than you realize, that hold the key to your destiny. See, what if Joseph hadn't cared? What if he hadn't noticed? What if he was too wrapped up in his own injustice? How his dreams weren't being fulfilled, how he was being overlooked and forgotten. Like, I'm sure he wasn't overly excited about how life was going in the moment. But somehow he kept his heart soft enough, and he didn't allow his environment to take root in his heart. And even in prison, he noticed the condition of those around him, and he ministered where he was. And what ends up happening? In another day in the future, his moment of compassion would be remembered, and it would be key that opened the door to him going to the palace. Like when I read this, I'm just like, wow. Like this little detail. You know, he notices, and he cares enough to ask. He cares enough to get involved in their life. And then years later, Pharaoh has a dream. And he's like, I don't know what this dream means. Somebody help me out. And oh yeah, the cupbearer who years ago had his dream interpreted comes up and says, you know, there's this guy, this handsome fellow. And he interpreted my dream. And so this little detail almost seems kind of insignificant, where he had some compassion, becomes this key to his whole life of opening the door to the dream that he's been believing forever. Like, isn't that amazing? Like, the people in your life that you're not even that concerned about, or you don't even like, I don't even really like the guy, but he's sad, so I should go over and talk to him. Hey, it's like, but it was everything. I mean, it's almost scary because everything hinged on this moment. The significance of this moment was so huge in his life. This little detail it was massive to what's going to happen, to how his life's going to unfold, to all the dreams that he's been believing for his whole life finally coming out. Details, details, details. Such a little details. It seems almost insignificant, showing compassion, caring. Oh, God's talking to me now. When you're tired, when you've had enough, when you're busy, when you have your own worries and heartaches. But it's little details that lead to big moments. And I really think that by this point in Joseph's life, he's not really thinking about being anyone great. He's not trying to achieve his dreams. But his heart remains soft through all the heartbreak, through all the disappointment. And he's in reality focused more on the details, the things that seem so little. And what happens, the details add up. So now he's ready for the dream. He's ready for the promotion. He's ready to save and forgive and even serve his family. God gave Joseph a dream, and it set the course for his life. But the stepping stones were built on the details. Brian, can I just get you to come back to the keyboard tonight? I love the story of Joseph, and I just encourage you just to take some time this week and just read over it. There's so much there. And I just wanted to give some time for prayer this morning. I think oftentimes God gives us dreams, and then there's the process of the dream. There's all the details of the dream. And when you look at Joseph's life, it took decades. And in those decades, the dream seem to become so faded, and you can almost forget the things that God one time spoke at your heart. And I just want to encourage you this morning. There's more going on than we sometimes realize. He spent all this time as a slave and all this time in prison. It just seemed impossible. But that's the thing about a God dream is what's impossible with man is possible with God. And so we can't always see beyond just the moment of what we're going through, but God's still in control and God's still working it out. And as you allow him to help you focus on those little details and those things that seem insignificant but really have a lot of importance and bearing, as you just focus on that, you just kind of keep going at those things. God's at work on the bigger picture of it all. And so this morning, I just want to pray for you. I want to pray for two groups of people this morning. And maybe I'll just ask you just to close your eyes right now. Holy Spirit, just come. Spirit of God, just come. The first group of people I'm looking for this morning are those that, you really feel like there is no real God dream about your life. You kind of just done your thing. You made a good life. But that significant kind of dream thing that's really grasped your heart, it just doesn't seem to be there. I actually feel like there's a few in this room today that you've been searching lately. You've just been like, God, okay, is this it? Like I got this or that, or I've done this or that, but it's just like, God, is this it? And I believe this morning God just really wants to begin to, and He has been speaking to you, and He wants to just begin to birth a dream in you, a God dream for your life. That no matter where you're at this stage, at this juncture, that God would just breathe in you a dream, a vision that would just grasp your heart. That would be bigger than than your own ability. That would be bigger than what you've thought or imagined. That would actually, there'll be some surprises in it where you'd be like, what, really? Like this? Like for me? Where you're even going to go like, I don't know if this even fits me totally. Like, it's almost going to be like, it's really going to take you by surprise. I'm not speaking prophetically here right now. That you're just going to be like, and you're going to struggle with it. You're going to, it's like you're going to wrestle with it. Because you're going to, I don't know if that's me. I don't know if that's something I can do. But God is going to keep bringing it back to your mind. And even and there's some here this morning, you know what I'm talking about, even right now as I'm saying it, because there's been something that's just keeps kind of coming back to your mind, and you're just wrestling with it. You've been wrestling with it for a while, and you're kind of in this place of, God, what's for me? But this thought keeps coming back to your mind. You need to understand that's a God thing. That God is stepping into your life, and He's saying, no, there is more. You've lived a certain way. You've gone down a certain path, and that's been fine. But God's saying there's more. There's something more that I'm going to release into you. There's something more that I'm going to birth into you. There's something that's going to grab your heart in a particular way, in almost peculiar way is the word I would use. And you're going to be like, oh, I can't, you won't be able to escape it. And so if that's you this morning where you're just like, yeah, I need that God dream. There's something that I know that's just not there. I just want you to raise your hand. And the second group of people I want to speak to this morning or pray with this morning is those that the dream just seems really faded. It's been a long haul. It's just been a real long haul. And I just want to remind you, you're not forgotten. The Lord says you're not overlooked. You're not overlooked. And I just feel like He just wants to release faith into your heart again for that dream. He wants to just blow on that dream again. Because there's something about the dream that just awakens our heart. There's something about the dream that gives us hope. There's something about the dream that enlivens our faith. There's something about the dream that draws us closer to God. There's something about the dream. If that's you this morning, why don't you raise your hand? Brian, why don't you just lead us in a song? And if you raised your hand this morning, I would just love if you'd be so bold as just to step up to the front. And I just want to pray with you, because I believe there's some prophetic words that God just wants to release into your life, and just some hope and some encouragement and some strength. That today's significant. This little church in Penticton, BC, that God would speak to your heart. that would cause the course of your destiny to be altered. So as Brian begins to sing,
Amazing grace, how sweet the sound